Kia ora whanau, welcome to the ALTBAYS show. This is our show number 101. It's been a pretty cool journey that we are on here in Whitianga, Aotearoa. Welcome, it's nice to see you all. If you're watching us right now, it's probably because you are on YouTube. And if you are on YouTube, you should subscribe to our channel. There's a little thing just below the screen. Just go there, subscribe, hit the button. And you can also become a member. You can join our platform and throw some dollars for the team so we can keep producing cool shows for you and yours, okay? If you are more of a listener, this show will be available in all the main podcast platforms after the end of the show. So you can go on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, and subscribe to our ALTBAYS channel in those platforms. Pretty cool. We have a second channel called ALTBAYS Clips, where we break down the chats and we turn them into smaller clips so you can watch some parts of the conversations and see if you want to listen to the whole thing. We also have our profile on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook, so make sure to follow us there too. Okay, today's a pretty cool day. It's a holiday, which is good here in New Zealand. If you're watching us from overseas, today is a holiday in New Zealand, which is cool. We got to sleep in. I did, which was great. I hope you did too. And we have a cool guest here with us tonight, Mr. Peter Pinkham. How are you?
I'm very good, thanks. Yeah.
You've been busy, eh?
Yeah, both in my my work life and out campaigning, and we've had over the last 4 weekends, we've had 10 public meetings we've attended and had a chance to give a speech, and people have to listen to me, which is cool. Yeah.
And you said it's cool because you get to meet the other candidates well.
Well, yeah, they've all become friends. It's been like a caravan, really, and at least if I don't get into the mayoral position, I'm going to know all of the other councillors and all the mayor really well. So, and it's been fun, to tell the truth. Yeah.
You own a bookshop in Thames.
I own a used bookshop with jigsaws and the Land of Books. Yeah, I've owned it for 6 years. Yeah. I bought it because I walked past it and had a sign in front of it that said, for sale. And I went and signed up for a house and signed up for a bookshop at the same time.
Good move?
Owning a bookshop is a privilege. It's just amazing. You get to meet people from all around the peninsula, all around New Zealand, and when people are travelling internationally, people from all around the world. And I have many conversations and arguments and debates about the whys and wherefores of the world. But yeah, it's real fun every day.
I'm a musician, so I always hear stories from musicians saying, oh, I went to this record shop, and people talk about Japan, and I went to Japan, and I was mesmerized. I was loving seeing all these rare pieces. I guess with books, it's like that's probably even bigger because I guess people read more than actually. I don't know. I could be wrong. Don't quote me on that one. But I guess there is a vibe there of finding a book or an edition.
Oh, it's one of the amazing things about a bookshop, and I have a wide variety of books. I've got 35,000 books in the shop, and there's a wide variety from Mills and Boons all the way through to rare New Zealand history to books about anything in the world, really. And it's amazing. People come in, they've been looking for a book for 2 years, and they find the book, and it's a good feeling, really. Yeah. Do
you keep in touch with other shops, or it's a place that people bring old books and then you buy and then you sell them? How do you find the titles?
I used to go out looking at, I'd look on Trade Me, and when I first bought the shop, and I'd go to book fairs around the place, around the environment. But the last 3 years I haven't had to go anywhere. People know that I buy books, and they turn up with books, and I have more than enough books. So, yeah. And with every box of books you buy, there's always a couple of gems, just lovely books. Yeah.
People always ask, like, this is a bit of a cliche question, so I'm gonna flip it. People say, "Oh, your favorite book? Which book sucks?" Which book did you read that you were like, "Oh man, not even keep going on this"?
Oh, no,
don't say the Bible. I'm joking.
No. Well, I did read the Bible one stage. We talked about that.
Yes.
There's a lot of books that I've read that suck, and I think writers and what people enjoy writing, and what people enjoy reading, shall I say, is that it changes over time. So what was a good book 30 years ago, it just doesn't ring true anymore. Yeah. So some writers have their day and other writers last forever. So, and yeah, it's, I every day going to work is an absolute pleasure. Just I absolutely love it. Yeah.
When you, I guess when we're children, we read a lot, and we might not even remember the amount of books that we read. But like, do you remember the ones that stuck with you, like when you were young? Like,
I read Biggles books. I read Secret 7, Famous 5, and which were quite, and people still come in and buy those books actually. But no, I don't have any other books that stick in my mind as being, as you grow up, you read books that are, a bit more sophisticated, but I always read a lot. But I used to, on the long drop, I used to read Westerns. That's where I learned about comics, because my old man would leave them there. So
I guess you get to learn a lot about history as well, obviously, just by default, just because you emerged on that world of information. What do you think about burning books, those moments in history that we get rid of stuff?
I can understand why dictators do it, because I think books have changed the world, and books and words have so much power because they contain ideas which are revolutionary, which is why I read books primarily, is to challenge my way of thinking and challenge how I feel about things, and because it gives you a rare insight into how other people think. And it's, that's why I read books. I don't read books for entertainment. I read books to challenge myself. And I'm lucky I get first dibs on every book that comes into my shop. And I take a lot home and I read and bring them back and sell them, Yeah.
It kind of relates to that idea of getting rid of statues, like same thing, like, people trying to erase a moment. And I always have to think about those things. It's very hard for me to come up with an opinion, because I understand the historical representation of that, but I also understand people who feel offended, like who maybe the person represented on a statue or something like represents a lot of pain, and like for their people, and they don't want to have to face that statue every day. So like I'm always interested in listening to people's opinions, because it's such a tricky one.
Well, I don't believe in Mein Kampf, but I'd certainly sell it in the bookshop. And because I think people have a right to read it and a right to their own thoughts. I wouldn't promote people to read it, but I'd carry it in the shop, and I have, And I wouldn't stop any book in my shop, even if it'd been banned. I'd still carry it, because I think people need knowledge to make decisions. And you can read a book like Mein Kampf, and there's lots of good things in it, but there's things about it which make you shudder. Right? So that's, I couldn't, as regards taking statues down, I really don't know. Not same as you, I'm confused about it, because it's not a simple process.
Nah.
You can't annihilate history. You can't annihilate what actually happened. The last thing you want to do is try to change what happened, because it's happened. Yeah.
And even if you get rid of something, there will be a gap there. in history. And then who knows who will come and tell the version of the story. It might be even worse than what happened, right?
I know. I'm really hesitant about any of those things, At least they should leave a plaque there saying this statue was taken down of this person. This is the reasons why it was taken down, I think. Yeah.
I just read something recently in New Zealand. Tamaiti, the Maori artist.
Yep.
He went to a hotel in Wellington, and he saw a painting that have you seen that?
I did. I read it.
It has his name, but his name was misspelled. Taylor.
Yes.
Instead of Tama, they wrote Tama. Tama presenting something. I don't remember the name of the. But he rewrote his own name, and the interesting thing is the artist liked it. The artist was like, wow, this is amazing. But the owner of the painting thought it was vandalism and expected the police to prosecute him. Tricky one, man. Do you have a go on that?
I guess I would question the person's attitude towards different races myself. Actually, yeah.
Short and sweet.
Thank you.
Yeah, because as soon as I saw that, I understand people buying arts.
Yeah. Well, I owned an art gallery for a while.
We're gonna get there.
Yeah.
I understand that, but when something like that happens, for me, is the absolute demonstration of art, in my opinion.
It keeps it alive.
It keeps alive. It has even more meaning.
Of course it does.
Now it's two artists in one piece.
And the artist knows it's true. He's not arguing against it because he made an honest mistake. And so he sees the validity of it because artists hopefully understand those things. Yeah.
How did you get to own an art gallery? What was the process? Are you an artist yourself?
No, I don't have an artistic bone in my body. It's just the same I was saying. I've tried to write a book and I can't write a book. So it just sounded like sanctimonious bullshit when I've tried it in the past. So I've given up on writing a book as well. Now, I guess my voyage into art is the first time I went into the National Art Gallery in Washington, D.C., I saw an artwork by Salvador Dali, and I didn't know who it was. I didn't realise it was him, but it just blew me away. And I went into the next room, and I saw these amazing blue paintings, and I stood there just, breath taken away, and it was a Picasso, right? And then I realised in my ex-Kaukoki days and business student days that these painters are famous for a good reason because they can communicate to people like myself who don't understand art. And then when I got married, my wife at the stage when we got married was the registrar of the National Art Gallery. And through her I met all the best artists in New Zealand, and they'd come around for dinner and we'd have long discussions. So that opened my mind up even more to art and the power of it and how it communicates different ways of looking at the world. And so when I had the chance, I had the space and I couldn't get someone to lease it, and I thought, I'll open an art gallery. So it's got a history behind it, But it went for 18 months and never made enough money, but I had some good exhibitions and some good openings and some parties.
What's the trickiest part? Because I see a lot of spaces doing exhibitions. Sometimes it's even like a pop-up exhibition. Is not even an art gallery, but they have exhibitions. But then you see the big art galleries surviving because they have the artist putting the artwork always there. It feels like it's a hub. It's a place that. Is that one of the reasons why it's so tricky? You actually have to get the artist to be loyal to you? How does that part of the process work?
Well, my understanding is that you need to get the artist loyal to you and you need to get your clients loyal to you as well. So you have to be an active smoozer, I call it. So you have to be a certain person who has a group of people who've got money who appreciate your choice of art and who are willing to back it and and invest in it. So that's my understanding of it. And I didn't think I was enough of a schmoozer to make it happen, really. Yeah. But as I said, I had some good exhibitions and met some really lovely people through it. Yeah.
A lot of I talk to a lot of artists, and it seems to be like an issue that goes around of like sometimes not knowing how to price your artwork, you know, because it becomes quite personal. How is the relationship of owning a place? Because you appreciate art, but you got to put a price on it, so you got to at least support that person and explain how things work. When it gets to money, seems to be a bit like tricky for artistic people.
Well, what we did is that when we hung the artworks, we had 3 or 4 people, the artist and the person hanging the artworks and myself and maybe a lady who worked for me, and we would discuss it. But I really wanted to make sure the artist was getting enough money to make it worthwhile for them to show. And it's a debate about how much you put on it, because you can't price it for time, because some artworks take for ages and you'd be charging $80,000 for a painting. And some of the artworks are worth a lot more than what they sell for, I think, you know, so I think it's a pretty hard row to hoe until you actually make a name for yourself and people, and someone with money's willing to back you, who believes in you, yeah. And I never got to that stage. But we certainly priced, I think, a bit higher than most people did, because I wanted to be fair to the artist.
Yeah. Is the percentage that the gallery takes also negotiable, or there's usually like a standard of, I don't know, 30%, 50% or whatever, or it depends on? Well,
I started off at 30% and went up to 35%, but I never sold the number of artworks. I think some art exhibitions I would have come out even, most probably, but primarily I didn't, you know. But I sort of saw it as, for me, I had enough money in the bank at that stage it was me doing it for Thames in some ways, you know, because it was right in the heart of town, and there was an art gallery. They never had an art gallery in the heart of town before, so. And I still get people now, sort of nearly a year later, coming in and saying, "Oh, it's so sad you closed it." You know, I said, "Well, I had to, you know, to be fair to me." Yeah.
Yeah, fair enough. Stick to the books.
Well, in the end, you know, dreams are dreams, but reality creeps in. So.
I like that. Fair. Man, we talked about books. We talked about arts, and for me, all these things are so related to mental health,
right?
You know, and I know I read a little bit about you before tonight, and you've been involved with the health system and hospitals and stuff for quite a while. How did the journey start?
Well, after hitchhiking around the world for 5 years, and
how old were you?
I was 26 at the time. You know, been to university, did a business degree, and then hitchhiked around the world and saw a lot of the world. And when I got back home and I had to start making money, and I thought, what do I do? And I thought, what I enjoy most of all is talking with people. So when I was driving past King's Head Hospital on the way back to Waiuku, where my parents were living, and I drove in there, went to the front desk and said I'd like to inquire about a job. And within 5 minutes, I was talking to the principal nurse, and we talked for half an hour. And she's an amazing woman, Joy Phelan. You know, I think she's a very superb woman, really. And she said, "Well." Did
they have a job? Did they? Or you just went there and said, "I want a job"?
I just went there and asked, you know. And she said, "Do you want to start on Monday?" And she said, "There's a training course starting in a month's time or 6 weeks' time, and you can be part of that." And I said, "Okay." And so that's how I started, actually.
And that was, what was that? Was it the psychiatric?
It was a psychiatric hospital in King's Head, which is in South Auckland, yeah. And quite a big, you know, when psychiatric hospitals were still functioning, yeah.
We mentioned something before, and I really want to bring this back on air because I found it so profound, like very simple, but like usually the simple things are the ones that cause more impact, because it's very common to ask counselors, psychiatrists, like people, oh, isn't it hard? Isn't it like a tough job that you take with you home? And then you said something about, well, it's the other person. So how is that relationship with dealing with tricky situations, and how is it after going home and living your life?
Well, a lot of the situations you deal with in hospitals, like you've got a pattern on how you deal with different issues, and primarily it's just a person-to-person thing. You learn to, I guess being a nurse, you're a symbol of authority anyway, so you have a degree of control. But more in the what we were talking about before, and do you take it home at night? And no, I don't take it home at night, because I'm very clear that other people's issues are their issues and they're not my issues. And I'll do my best, my darndest, and I'll learn what I can and be best at my job when I'm there. But when I leave at night, that's it, until I go back again, really.
You said something like, you said that you really like talking to people, so you were looking for a job where you could make good use out of that. How important is the talking, the being there, compared to the pills, the medicines, like what the prescription is? And
I think they're both important, like most people who come into psychiatric hospitals who either have schizophrenia or whatever diagnosis that they have, whether it's depression or whatever it is, most of them are people who are pretty hurt emotionally and psychically. Most have damaged backgrounds, and or they've had experiences they haven't coped with, and they're real people like you and I who internally they feel like they've experienced something traumatic. And so I think being a human with them and asking good questions and empathizing and helping them talk through different ways of coping and doing things is as important as anything else. And from my point of view, I think it's even more important, really. Yeah.
Excuse my ignorance. So in those situations, do you deal mainly with people who have a condition, like who actually have something that has to be treated, or also people who developed a condition that was caused from a trauma or something that happened, or it's a mix of both?
I think it's very much of a mix of both. I think, and I think even though people might have one diagnosis, where it's schizophrenia or whatever, I think there are multiple causes, not one cause. And my own personal theory is, I think, withdrawing from the world, etc., creates different chemicals happening in your body, and that can have ramifications as well. So, and it's the same as changing your behaviour changes the chemical makeup of your body as well. So, but that's sort of getting a little bit deeper into it, really.
Do you still have any relationship with the health system? Like, are you still involved somehow with?
Not anymore, no. I have been. I stopped being because after training as a nurse, I trained as a nurse therapist, and I did psychology for 3 years, and then I got a job of being director of Richmond Fellowship, which is a therapeutic community in Wellington, and I pursued active trying to become a member of the Psychotherapy Association, because that was a very psychotherapeutic approach in the therapeutic community. So I pursued that, but I stopped doing that in 1986, and all I've done since then, I did 4 years in Auckland as a volunteer for Lifeline in Auckland, which I really enjoyed. So, but that was after a trip to France when I realised how much I missed it.
So that job, the Lifeline, is it the ones that like there's a number and you call it, it's
Yep.
anonymous and then it's just someone there
Yep.
to chat? How is the preparation for that? Like, so what do you get briefed? Like, yep, you can go, you can talk about these things, or because you were already a professional, they give you autonomy to.
They had a pretty thorough training program and how they wanted to approach it at that stage. There's a very amazing woman who was the director of it at that stage, and she had helped set it up in New Zealand, and she had a very much of a what was a Rogerian client-centered approach. And so basically your job was to be a counsellor and to be a therapist using the telephone as a medium. And I was really surprised, being someone who's used to face-to-face therapy, that I was really impressed about how good it can be. But people who ring up generally are what I call hot to trot.
Hot to?
Hot to trot.
Hot to trot.
Well, because they ring up because they really need someone, right?
Yeah.
They really need to change, and they're willing to look a lot harder inside themselves about what's causing what's going on. So
it must be quite challenging to be a volunteering job, because like you're not briefed, you don't have much information about the person, you're actually not looking at them. What are the main differences of the telephone and then in the face-to-face? You get different sessions, you get to know the person, and then it's just a call. Boom, do it, go for it.
It's pretty amazing. I found, especially when you're in the room by yourself, there's nobody else there. Sometimes there's other counsellors, but often at night you're by yourself, right? And within 5 minutes, you're deep in this serious conversation with someone, and it's like the rest of the world doesn't exist. That's all that exists, just their voice and your voice, and you read different signs from people. You read how they're breathing, you read the gaps in between, you read the emotion in their voice, and I was pleasantly surprised about how effective it was. And you don't need briefing because you can ask questions. And knowing their past history maybe doesn't matter in that case. Yeah.
Do you feel like men struggle to seek for help? Quite broad, I know, a bit like just.
I know. Yeah, this
can go in so many directions, but it's because it's so. People say that all the time. Oh, like men don't go to the doctor, men don't go, but maybe men call to the helpline when no one is watching.
I don't know what the stats were. I never really took much notice of it because I got phone calls from men as well as women. And so I don't know the stats about that. And I don't accept that New Zealand men don't have feelings, or I just think New Zealand men express them in different ways which women don't understand, actually. Yeah. I'll throw that out there just to be a little bit stirring, but because women you hear the story all the time about, men don't express their feelings and stuff, but they do in their own way, And, I've never had a lack of friends to talk about how I feel about things in my life. And I grew up to be, maybe not totally normal Kiwi, but pretty normal background, yeah.
I guess this stigma or this thing comes up like, they don't know how to express. I'm not even talking about Kiwi men specifically, but like it's a common thing to say, they don't. Because without the verbal cues, like without actually expressing yourself, I think it's not everyone who has the ability to pick up on a body language or something. Do you feel like it could be something that could be introduced maybe at school or when we are growing up, like kind of like better ways to express yourself? I don't know if I'm being too
Oh, no.
topic.
Well, no, most people, it's valid, but I don't know whether there is or not, because in the end, men have to express their feelings about how they want to express them, not how other people think they should express them. So, yeah, I'll throw that one out as well because, got to fight for men's rights here,
man.
and I have my friends and I've always expressed my feelings with them.
Yep.
So, and not only since I've been, I got training in the area, that I don't think I've ever bottled up my feelings, but maybe I got a bit angry when I was a kid now and again, I blew my cool, I don't do that quite as much, but I did throw a few tennis rackets in my life. Yeah.
We've all been there, man.
I know.
And I'm not even like going there like, come on, it's just because sometimes it feels like everyone's got an opinion.
Yes. Yeah.
But the professionals, they say like you're saying, and that's why I'm asking, because it's good to listen to this sometimes of like, we give shit to a lot of people without realizing that it's our idea of how we want them to be.
Exactly.
Instead of trying to understand what they are. Unless it becomes damaging to oneself, then it's not good. Then we should definitely be targeting that issue. But there's a lot of, what's the word? When you project? Is that the word? Yeah.
And both sexes have trouble handling their emotions and stuff. It's, and if you care to have feelings, you're going to have emotions, and if you care to feel deeply, you're going to have, it's like a continuum. If you feel deeply positively about something, you also have the ability to feel deeply negatively about something. So it's about depth of feeling. It's not about expressing feelings. It's about depth of feelings, I think,
You mentioned before, off air, about the time when you were younger, you tapped into meditation. Yeah. And I guess with the work you've done in the health system, breathing, it's quite an important thing to...
Well, breathing's very important for controlling anxiety, of course, and it's also the technique that you use to meditate to quieten yourself as well. So that's a transferable skill, really, I think, yeah.
Do you feel like it helps also with like concentration? Because it's the same with books, like I love this. There's this philosopher in Brazil and he always says, people ask me, how do I get to read more? And he's like, ooh, that's my biggest secret. You sit down, you open the book and you read. But then people are like, I can sit still, I can read 2 pages. And he's like, read one.
I know. And
read 2 the next day, or read 1 again.
Yeah, and it's amazing because, I remember last year going home and I took this book home and it was by someone I've never heard of before, but it just looked interesting. And I got home and I poured myself a drink and lay on the couch on the deck and in the sun. And an hour later, I hadn't touched my drink. I'd just been reading. And I thought, wow, that's the magic of books, is that I read this book about a subject I never even knew anything about. It was written by an Indian woman in, I think in northern Maine, Hampshire, I think. And just was sort of autobiographical, but not really. She was using her experiences to tell a story. But it was just about a subject and a point of view I'd never considered before. But an hour later, my ice had melted in my drink. I still drank it, of course, as you do. But I thought that's sort of the magic of books, because not only is it informing me, but it takes you through that experience of just being totally involved in something. Yeah.
And that's where the beauty, because there's a discussion now. Well, if it sells, then it becomes a discussion. People are saying, "Oh, are books gonna become obsolete or whatever?" And like my take on the thing before listening to yours is like, the power is there, the knowledge is there. It's actually of course, it makes a big difference because some people like the physical things, some people just think it's more practical to have a lot of books in your cell phone, but like it's not about that. It's the knowledge that is it's in those words, you know, that someone put it down, and like how you gonna bring them to yourself that matters. However, it is an interesting thing to put it out there, because history keeps changing but also repeating itself.
Well, when you think I own a bookshop and I own all these books, I also read books on Amazon, you know, on Kindle. I also listen to podcasts, and I listen to books on online with Audible as well. They should give me some advertising dollars for that, really, but but I mean, so I, you know, and I read all the time, right? And people ask me about how do I get all this time to read, you know, because I've got a business and like I'm campaigning at the moment as well, but and one of my favourite sayings these days is that I practice laziness as much as possible. And I've figured out you can only be lazy if you're well organised. And so, you know, I do whole lots of things in my life.
You got to explain that. You cannot just throw it there and just leave it there. The lazy people will be like, come on.
I know. But the thing is, you want to be lazy without stress or worry. You just become organised, and time frees itself. That's what I've found. You know, time frees itself up. You know, like.
Are you a to-do list guy?
No.
Are you a list guy at all? It doesn't feel like it.
I hate it. I hate lists.
How do you keep up with all the things you have to do? You must be very good with organizing things in your brain. You just have the compartments and all the stuff you have to do. Or your life is super easy, Peter, and you're not giving me the gold.
Well, I think all my life, one of my favourite activities has always been thinking, and sort of, and when you've got things, and if you've forgotten something to do something, it can't have been that important anyway, you know. But one of the good things about, you know, the tools like, you know, Facebook and everything else, birthdays come up automatically. You don't have to worry about them anymore, you know, so you don't, that's one thing you don't have to worry about, you know. It's someone's birthday, say happy birthday, so I say happy birthday, you know, and maybe add a few words, but the rest of it, you know, it's sort of, and I don't like habits either, so I think habits are anti-life. I've got a few sayings I've created for myself in life, and habits are anti-life as well.
Why?
Because I think when you do something habitually, you're not thinking about what you're doing. You're not engaging. Right?
Even the good habits, like a healthy one that you would say?
Exactly.
Even those?
Yep. No, all habits are anti-life, I think, because you're not... And it goes along with the whole mindfulness thing, if you think about it, because I get so many people come into the shop and they say, oh, when you get older, time goes so fast, right? And I always say, it's because you're not taking any notice, right? Because you're doing things habitually all day. You get up, you have breakfast at the same time every day. You have a shower at the same time. You know, I do things differently every morning, you know. And it means I have to think about it. And it means that I'm engaging all the time. So for me, it means I'm getting more out of the small moments in life.
Are you married?
No.
Ah!
We talked about that. I've actually...
It was just a good segue.
Yeah, no, I know. Obviously.
Suddenly you have time.
Obviously, I live by myself. And I have primarily for the last nearly 30 years, actually. I live by myself. Yeah. I was married, and sometimes in those 30 years, you know, one or two of my kids have lived with me, you know. But they're all in their mid to late 30s. Well, my oldest one just turned 40 recently, which I gave him a bit of flack about. And he just reflected back about how old I was, you know, because that's how old he was. So, yeah, thank you. Yeah. So, yeah, I just think that's quite important, really. Yeah.
So were you married but not living with a partner the whole time?
We lived together for 12 years, but we were married for 40 years. And I'm saying that I've got the secret to a long marriage. You just don't live together. So.
Did you come up? Was that your decision? Or like,
oh no, she left
just
me.
Happened,
oh no,
the living a different.
Oh no, well she left and took off. You know, wise woman. I always thought. You know, she's a good, smart woman. So she left me. You know, it's mostly a smart move.
But like during the time that you guys were not, you were together but not living together. Was it just like, yeah, it's better if we do our thing and
yeah, well, and we never went through the divorce process. That's all. Yeah, so. But in the meantime, our kids had to go to school and university and everything else. So whenever we needed to negotiate over what was happening with the kids, we'd talk about it and resolve it. And it seemed to work pretty well, really, just being adult about it, really. Because, the whole thing is a relationship's a relationship, but your kids, I think, are pretty much of a sacred responsibility. You bring them into life, and it's your responsibility to take to look after them and as best you can, really. Yeah. And luckily, I've got two lads who are men now, of course, who've grown up to be really, really nice people. Yeah.
Very good friend of mine. He was in a relationship for maybe, I think 9 or 10 years. And then I remember one day he was walking along the beach and he had his dogs and I could see that something was going on. And then he came to me and I was like, "Are you all right?" And he's like, "I just broke up." And I looked at him and I was like, "Oh, congratulations." And then he was confused.
Yes.
And then he laughed, and I was like, "See, good, already made you laugh."
Yes.
Good start. And I know that we all know that it's not easy. We all know that you're gonna go through the grieving and you know that. But it's also an opportunity to look at the other side of you had something for a while, maybe how long was that good for? Was that a time that you realized that it was not as good anymore and you took time to make a decision? So what a great opportunity to look back and reflect on those things. So congratulations, it's a new start in your life. I'm not saying congratulations, hey, yes, you're single and sad. I'm just saying congratulations for what you've done and now you carry on.
Yes, that's right. And I remember coming home after my wife left and I was just totally devastated. Even though I knew it was going to happen, we'd been going for counselling and it hadn't been good for a couple of years, But when the split finally happened, it was devastating. But the first thing I did after reading the note that Kate left, I took the ring off my finger and put it in the drawer and I said, "No more. That's it. I'm not going to try to get this relationship back together again. Now I just deal with the separation," right? And I think that helped me, because then it's clear what the discussion is afterwards. It's not about relationships. It's about looking after your kids and resolving all the physical, the shared resources and stuff you build up. So, and I think that was quite a significant thing to do for me, really. But it didn't stop the hurt, didn't stop the crying, it didn't stop the internal, because you make big promises to yourself when you get married to you and the other person, and I think those are made in good heart and true emotional feelings and love, etc. And when you lose love, I think it's a significant moment in your life, because it's a dream that you shared isn't a shared dream anymore. So,
I'm fascinated about the subject, and I did some reading and research, and then it goes back to when private properties became a thing, and then humans realized, men realized, oh, you want a man so you can pass the lands or whatever, and it stays in the family, and then woman and all these things become commodity, and then you have children, then you might as well have a wedding. So it was the start of a big system that operates nowadays very successfully. Not as much because, divorce is probably bigger than marriages nowadays. But do you think this whole pressure of putting a lot of things on top of the union kind of mines the love a little bit? or they walk separately and sometimes they just cross paths? Ooh, here we go, deep.
Well, I've thought about it. Well, obviously I've thought about it, and well, when you're together, you do the best that you can, like we made some big decisions together and took some major risks, right? So we went from having a very comfortable life in Wellington, when I was working at Richmond Fellowship and my wife was working at the National Art Gallery. But when we shifted up north, we went up there and we couldn't get work. And we were trying to build a house and it just, I think it put an incredible amount of strain on the relationship. And we forgot, I think in the process, we forgot to woo each other, we forgot to keep courting each other. We forgot to, we started seeing the flaws in the other person's character rather than accepting the flaws and looking for the beautiful things in them. So I think, both of us were responsible for that breakdown, really. Yeah.
You mentioned something, Peter, that was I loved it. So I want to bring it back. Someone told you, how can you run for mayor? You're so calm. Was it something like that? Was it
so relaxed.
So relaxed. So relaxed.
Yes.
So is that an expectation, you reckon, that like people who are in the power, or because we see these horrible representations of dictators or like presidents that are fucked in the heads and they are like, they're loud and they're crazy. Like, do you think we kind of get this image that people who are running for those positions, they have to be on like 3 coffees?
Well, they have to be saying, I'm going to change the world, that's what they're wanting, and you hear it when we go to meetings and people say, oh, I'm going to, do this and this and do that, and everyone gets all excited, so, but we know most promises politicians make, they never keep them anyway, so that's why I sort of decided I was not going to go in and make promises, right? And all I was going to present myself as a candidate as myself with my own philosophy, with my ideas, and in the past, whatever role I've had, I've managed to make major transformations in the organisations I've worked for. Even when I was working in Auckland as a consultant, I helped the primary company that I worked for transform itself. And I didn't have a designated role, My business card showed nothing as my role, but I managed to change it. And so and that's what I think people thought I was too relaxed, because I wasn't all sort of, I'm going to do this and the last council or a pack of whatever, and I don't feel that way, I think politicians are people doing the best that they can, and they mightn't do everything right, but I still think they're genuinely people doing the best they can, and they might get a bit diverted or go up the wrong path every now and again, but in the end we're all susceptible to diversions and temptations and wrong ideas or wrong advice, so all I see is the humanity in organisations. I don't see anything negative, really. I suppose. So I don't feel that hellfire and damnation sort of process and I'm going to change the world. I think change, especially in government and in councils, I think change happens slowly. It happens by a process of the community and the council slowly coming up with good ideas together and working together for the good of the community. That's what in the role of the mayor is, to bring that whole team together, to be the linking point between the community and the council, and to inspire the people working there and to inspire the people in the community, saying this is what we're going to try and do, let's get on board, So it's not about my ideas, it's about I have faith that people with good ideas, when they express them, as long as I'm open enough to listen to them, I'll use anyone's ideas, you know. Yeah. And I'll do my utmost to make them happen if they're good ideas and they're going to help us as a community grow. Yeah.
The demographics.
Hopefully that makes sense.
Oh, it does. Yeah. Well, that's as you said, you're not trying to put a lot of things, you know, like and say you just because that's how I see it as well. Like now that I'm talking to more politicians and I'm understanding where they sit, I'm like, well, they all rely on each other.
Yes.
You know, like without a solid community board, you're ruined. Like,
well, that's right, because then the ideas aren't coming through from the community, you know, and it's like strong ratepayers groups, you know, and it's not only those, you know, because we have other groups. There's groups all the way through our communities in the Coromandel, within New Zealand as well. Like, yeah, you got bowls clubs, you got cricket clubs, you got rugby clubs, you got croquet clubs, you got sewing classes, you know, and all of these are groups that help our community function.
Yeah.
And they add meaningful things for people to do and ways of people mixing and doing something together as a group, you know. So those are all important in our community.
The people, the lower classes, the ones who are less likely to be in groups and the ones who are less likely to have a solid representation, they also don't show up to the meetings.
No.
They also don't engage with politics. And in my view, when I'm choosing a candidate, that I've been talking this in every show that I can. If my life is okay and I don't see a point that someone is saying that is going to be helpful for me, I try to look at the most vulnerable person that I know, and I try to at least think about them, because maybe they are not. So I just try to do something good there. So why is it? Why it's hard to implement the importance and the idea of politics to lower classes when they're actually sometimes even majority in some places, and they could change the whole course of an election?
I wish I had the answer to that.
God damn it, Peter! Shit!
I wish I did, because, like, you know, like, I'm lucky enough in my shop, I have people from that group who come into the shop every now and again, and some people I give books to because they don't have enough money, or, you know, to buy books, you know, and I try to get them to bring them back, but they don't always. And I talk to people on the, you know, passing the street, you know, because, you know, it just helps me understand the community that I live in. But I'm really aware that, you know, since I've lived in Thames, and I have had no social meeting, I suppose, with people of a different class or even different races, really. You know, it's sort of when I've lived in other communities like up the far north, I was very involved in the Maori community up there because I ran a hospital, and I got involved through the county centennial things of paddling the waka at Waitangi, right? And I did, and we trained for 3 months, and we paddled it from Waitangi to Whangaroa Harbour, you know, which is an all-day paddle, you know. So, and I got involved in that community up there, but living in Thames and the Coromandel, I haven't had any involvement in that community other than the people who come into my shop to buy books, really. And and it's been very similar with the campaign so far, you know, that there's been no interaction with the Maori community. There's been no interaction with the young community, and there's been no interaction with, I guess, the poorer community either, you know. And my quip when I've been going to some of the meetings is saying, you know, it's good to see everyone here shares the same hair colour as myself, right? And which is, I think it's really sad, actually, you know. But at the same time, these are people who do go, who are very keen about their community, and generally they're not self-serving individuals. Generally they're caring for their community individuals. So their views are valid as well. it's just that I'm not getting to hear the others, and personally, I'm actually really sad about that. Yeah.
Yeah, I see a lot of potential for more groups to get together and
Yes.
try to mobilize, like to try to involve in a way that it's easy to digest, because it's hard,
I
like
know.
for me to navigate this conversation sometimes, like it's so tricky because it gets into the words that not even the politics make sense sometimes.
Yeah.
And then you're like, fuck, imagine a young person who, like is just starting to understand these things. So
Yes, yeah, and they look at the people who are standing, or who are generally all part of that, I guess, privileged group, who been educated, and even though I don't have a lot of money now, I've had a lot of money in the past, and I'm comfortably off, but I don't own anything really. All I own is a shop. I don't own a house or anything, but at the same time, I don't think I'm interacting with those people. So, if I became mayor, I become their representative, so I surely hope to God that when, if that happens, that they make their views open to me, so that I know that any decision I make is a sensible one for everyone, really. That's my wish, to tell the truth, because how else can you be a true democratic politician if you're not listening to the voice of everyone? And that's as many individuals, not just groups, but individuals, because some people don't like belonging to groups. They see themselves as by themselves, but sometimes those people have the best ideas. So, and you're a fool if you miss out on the good ideas, I think.
that's right.
And I fully admit to being a fool and stupid at times. So we shouldn't put that online, really.
It's live, man. It's gone.
It's gone. It's in the mist. Yeah.
Man, just two quick things before I jump into the next subject. I just loved what you said. Owning up to your ignorance is a great step. Very good. And you mentioned yourself being a privileged man, which is fantastic, because I feel like a lot of people don't understand that. Because if you live by comparison, you're fucked. You're always going to say that you don't have enough. But when you don't have something, you understand privilege. And for people like us, I'm also a privileged man, like I'm from Brazil, and I could put myself in the victim of the position, but like I had a pretty good life and opportunities to come to this country and be where I am.
Yeah.
So I see myself as a very highly privileged man. So I love to see people who has a history like you, as you said, who had money, who's done things, and acknowledge that.
Yes.
Doesn't happen all the time.
No. Well, and I'm lucky I don't have a great desire for the riches of the world anyway, because I have friends who are super rich and stuff, and they're nice people, but I worked out recently. I sort of reaffirmed to myself that in some ways I've never really been interested in it. Like instead of getting a high-powered job after my first degree, I travelled around the world for 5 years. So obviously I value experience and knowledge than I do more money in the bank, really. And I think I've always been like that, and I still am, really. Yeah.
What bothers you in the Coromandel?
Well, the thing that bothers me, and it bothered me about Thames since I've been there, is I think the Coromandel is quite a racist community, and it's not an obvious racism. I think it's it hovers in the background all the time, and that's just and my first concern, I had that feeling, but then I drove past the court one day when the court was in session, and there were all Maori people outside, and I thought, that's just not a good look for a community, and I guess since then I've been concerned about it, really, yeah. But even then I haven't been involved with it, because in some ways it's not my fight, even though it is my fight, but and after being so involved up north with the whole thing, I miss that aspect of my life, but it just doesn't, it's not something that happens. So, yeah. So that's that's one thing about the community. And also a lot of the poverty around concerns me, and obviously along with that there's a lack of good housing for people, and which is a concern, but again, that sort of hasn't touched me on a personal level at all, really. Yeah.
So should we expect things that you would be targeting more or paying more attention as first steps, or you're gonna keep it, as you said, you're gonna keep it open and you're gonna listen to people bringing things to you as a mayor?
Well, then it becomes more my job, and so then I'd make an active attempt to become more involved and actually put out feelers and put out, I guess, a welcome. And because one of the things I became aware of when I was up north, and when we were training, especially for the long paddle on the waka, is that I discovered in my mid to late 30s that it seemed to me as if there are two parallel communities in New Zealand. There's the Maori community who mix with us and the Pākehā community, but very infrequently do we as Pākehā mix with Maori in their community. And that was one of the big eye-openers that I had when I became involved up there. I thought, all this is going on and under my nose, and I've never seen it, and I've never been part of it. So, yeah. So I've always been aware of that ever since, but at the same time, living in Auckland and living in Thames, you don't have to be involved with it, and it's not part of my day-to-day existence. So,
Yeah, but it's interesting, when you when you click for something, then it becomes a thing, right? Sometimes it's just not on your radar.
No, well, I'm aware of it, and I'm aware of my lack. At least I'm aware of my lack, and it doesn't make it any better, of course, but I am aware of it, and I am sensitive to it, so yeah. Does that make me even worse of a trendy lefty liberal? I don't know, really.
I was actually thinking about that because when you're running for mayor, you don't have to affiliate to a party, right?
No, I've never had any affiliation to any party in New Zealand. Yeah, I've never felt like I fitted in any of them. Yeah, to tell the truth. Yeah.
So my question was, do you feel like, depending on your political spectrum, like, is it sometimes it's good that you say where you sit, or not really? It depends, because you just said left and but like, do you think it matters to the people who are about to vote? I'm sure it matters to some, but I think I'm a bit of a strange mixture. I've got a degree and a master's degree in business, and I've been a businessman for years, and I've been a good businessman, but at the same time, I'm sort of, and when I was talking to the eco drinks people the other night, and I call myself a closet greenie, because that's how I live my life, really. I only use Bookshop, which is one step up on the good ladder from recycling, because you don't have to process it all. And I worked for a recycling company in Auckland for 25 years, helping it to become a more efficient company. So, yeah, so... And I think I'm a mixture between left and right, really, to tell the truth, hence why I don't feel like I fit into any party at all. And I don't. And I vote each time in the elections on who I think is presenting the best case, so I change who I vote for, yeah. Yeah, I'm always wary about the left, right, center, right, like, I'm not a big communist guy, but like what Karl Marx would say about when you divide the people, you weaken the people.
Yes.
Like that really like stays with me.
Yes. Well, there's lots of truths in a lot of people write, and even on the flip side, some of the things which Ayn Rand, wrote, which is a really right-leaning philosophy, that too has lots of good elements of truth in it. So Yeah, so it's just getting those little bits of wisdom from whoever's mouth it's coming from, really. Who they all help. But in the end, it's how you process those thoughts and feelings and insights yourself and how you bring them into your day-to-day life. Because one of the things I learned when I spent so much time meditating, I figured out it's easy to be a saint sitting on top of a mountain, It's only worth it if you can go out and mix it in day-to-day activities. Has it got any value? Yeah. And I like to think I succeeded at that, but I think I've had quite a few miserable failures myself.
That's how you learn, right?
I know, and it's, because every experience is a different experience, and that's one of the pleasures of life is the amazing experiences that you have and how they challenge your thoughts and ideas and how you change them to as a result of it, yeah. And that's a never-ending process. Well, it hasn't ended for me yet, so into my 8th decade, and it still keeps going, yeah. And it does, and it's even just as exciting now as it used to be, even more so, I think, yeah.
You're an interesting man. I love this part of the meditation, the peacefulness, the finding the groove, then understanding how things should operate within, so you can do something better with what comes in front of you.
Yeah.
But you're also a businessman.
Exactly.
And then I want to ask you about competition. I'm just going to say something shortly about where I sit to what I would like to hear your perspective on, because I understand the importance of it. So, for example, when you're at school and when there's a sport thing, but for me that doesn't make sense if the starting point is not the same. So I like to see some kind of equity, some people having the same departure points, and then it becomes a fair thing. But it's a bit of a dog eat dog world. And competition is always so heightened. It's always be better, be the best, and then I got these two sides of you, because a business to thrive means that there's competition involved and probably is doing better than other businesses. So I just wanted to get you to pick your brain on that.
I don't feel like I'm in competition with anyone, really. I'm more in competition with myself to, in terms of books, etc., and improve how my shop looks, improve my service to my customers, to improve the quality of the books that I get in. And if that means I'm successful, well, all well and good, really. But I've never really felt the need, even though I've played sport in which if I lose, I always got rather annoyed. But at the same time, each time you do your best you can, and the other person is as well. And I think it's exciting to actually compete with people. It adds an edge, and it adds an anxiety and everything else. But I've never really felt that whole thing of competing, really, and feeling the need to do that is to succeed at the cost of someone else. Yeah, I don't think it's necessary, actually. It's sort of a bit of a waste of life, really. But competing is fun, Yeah, but it means you compete, you're going to win and lose sometimes, and it's always better fun winning, of course. It just goes without saying, really. But to do so gracefully, which most probably haven't always achieved, it's sort of, but still, yeah. So.
Yeah, I tried to play a bit devil's advocate before, but clearly that. But that's how I see it. Because for you to thrive, it means that someone is in the shit. Someone is.
I don't think that's true at all. I don't think that's true at all. I don't think it's true at all. It's sort of. I just think if you're doing something very well, you're adding to the value of a whole lot of people's lives, and And I don't think it's doing it at the price of anyone else, you know. So as long as you're honest in your dealings and treat people with respect, and which sounds nice and aspirational, I guess. But it's sort of it's actually how I like living my life, you know, because it's how I want to be treated as well, you know. And it doesn't always happen, but it's, be that as it may.
But by having that mindset, it becomes easier to identify those qualities, those characteristics in other people, I would say.
Well, and to encourage them, I think, you know, because, I think, because that's how you all grow as people, is you encourage people, and if you think you can help someone and train someone or give someone a good idea, and because it raises the life of everyone, you know, so that's what I like to try and think, to try and do, is that you try to raise the life of everyone. You don't try to just raise your own life up, because then you're thinking yourself better than everyone else, you know. But you only have to be honest with yourself, and look how stupid we are sometimes. It's sort of, if you're being honest with yourself, you know, how can you ever get an inflated idea of your own importance? I think, tell the truth.
Tell the truth.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter how hard it is, make that effort, eh?
Well, it's just easier to live with the truth than not, because otherwise you're into the land of subterfuge, and I think you're into the land of bad mental health when you're not facing the truth in yourself,
You're going to have to deal with it sooner or later, eh? That's the thing.
Oh, if I get it,
well, not you specifically. I mean, if you're not honest, it will come back at you.
Because it comes back, you know. Of course it does, you know. But whether I can carry these nice thoughts about the world into being a politician, that's sort of a challenge, you know, I mightn't have to face, you know, the people will choose, you know, and in the end it's their choice, you know, whether I get in or not. But at the same time, if I get in, you know, I know it's going to change my life, you know, but hopefully I've got my head in the right space that I can continue having the ideals and the ways of life that I believe in, to continue and to present a different type of person who is a mayor. Yeah.
Will the bookshop remain open if you take it, if you win, if you become the mayor?
Exactly. And I'd work there as much as I could, because that's your day-to-day activity. But the positive side, it's going to create a job for someone, isn't it? Yeah, because I'm going to have to employ someone to either manage it, or 2 or 3 people to do a day each here and there, so and still manage it myself. And I think I have a group of people already lined up who's a possibility for that. So.
That's good. Should I read this? Should I have a look at this? We have a comment on our live chat. Kyla Dime or Kyla Deem? Kyla Dime. Educate us, please. The women, I mean. What are we looking for, probably, when we were talking about the relationships? And then, do you want to educate her before I go to her next comments?
No. I hesitate to move in such things. Yes.
We're going to start throwing things at our window. It's going to be your fault, man.
We'll just have a we won't get into that. Yeah.
Man, I'm not going to educate anyone as well, but it's so powerful. It's just cool, like the way that we were talking about men and women, and like that idea of like stepping back, you know, like make a big effort to leave the emotions aside, you know, like, and try to see things from a different perspective. You know, I try to do that with my life every day, you know, like, because we get excited, we get angry, we get sometimes too excited, which is not good either.
No.
You know, I'm learning this now. Getting too excited and celebrating too much, it's not good. You know, keep it cool. Try to keep it that. But like, how do you do that? Well, put yourself out of the situation. Put someone else there and try to have a look. So I think that's a lot involved with what you said. You're like, oh, you got to understand how people are.
Yes.
Because they give you signs. They give you cues.
It's like us talking now, you're watching my reactions and I'm watching your reactions, and it just keeps the dialogue open all the time, and and it's the same between, even people like come into the shop, like I think I've made one major mistake of saying the wrong thing inadvertently, and it ended up in not a positive situation in the shop, and I never managed to resolve it, and that hurt me for 2 days afterwards, that I was that lacking in sensitivity that I didn't pick up what was going on, right? And nothing was meant on purpose, and this young lady misinterpreted something I said, right? And I didn't resolve it quick enough, and I picked up the wrong things, and then something happened that built on it, and all of a sudden a situation develops, and I go, how did I not pick that up, and it was just not paying attention, not paying attention to the person, and there are other circumstances involved because the shop was busy, but it's not an excuse, unfortunately. But I have to live with that, that it was a situation I didn't manage properly, and and so that's what I think about the man-woman thing. It's about being sensitive to each other, and even though I haven't been in a serious relationship for a number of years, it doesn't mean to say I'm not open to a serious relationship, and I don't share any negative feelings about women or anything, because, it's just that I want to live by myself, actually,
Words of wisdom just there.
Well, I don't know. Maybe I dodged a bullet. Who knows?
Well,
it could be in total rationalisation, of course, but it's not, actually. It's not. I do enjoy living by myself because it gives me a freedom that I don't have otherwise,
And Kayla also says, paper books don't give off radiation, though, so there's that.
There is that indeed. And you can read them at the beach and in the sunshine.
That's right. Yes.
And you can throw them in the corner if you don't like them, and doesn't cause you thousands of dollars worth of damage. So it's always positive. Yes.
Go books.
Go books. Yes.
Peter, thank you so much. It's been a cool chat, man.
Oh no, very much so.
Man. Do you wanna leave a message, man? Now is the time for you, man. Talk to the people, man.
No. I think I've said lots of things. I'm just a person standing for politics who's just presenting myself and as a person who I think would be good for doing the job. Actually.
And what's the name of the shop again?
The Land of Books.
The Land of Books in Thames.
Right in the heart of town. Yeah. And it's I call it a used bookshop growing up because it looks like a good shop. It's not a dark, dingy shop. It's a light shop. It's got a couch to sit on, and it's got the lady who works for me is lovely. She loves her job and she engages with people, and I think we both do, So I think people come into the shop because it's an enjoyable experience, They get a conversation, they smile, the chance to talk and go away with some good books, and books only come to life when they're read.
I like that one. I think that's it. After that one, that's us.
Okay, thanks.
Good luck.
Thanks very much.
And thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. A pleasure being here. Yeah.
Thanks, Taylor. And for you guys watching us at home, we're live every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 7 p.m. We live stream on YouTube, and then our videos become available on YouTube and also in all the podcast platforms. So check us out. I'll see you guys on Wednesday with Mr. Olivier Sarko. He is a masseur. He's a Reiki master, and he's studying to be a contact care specialist. You don't know what that is? Great. So watch us on Wednesday and find out. Peace.